strategy documents and also the Ngāmutu New Plymouth City Centre strategy, which looks to increase numbers of homes in around the city centre. Are those things that we, as a planner, you'd be looking to guide our decision making?
Yes, they are.
Right, thank you for that. And that's everything I have. And thank you for your assistance and your attendance.
Thank
It's
you.
always easy being perhaps one of the later planners in these days, because we ask all these questions and then really ask you to confirm that's what you've heard before. So I appreciate your help. All right, so we're back to Dr. Charles.
Yes, and sir, just before we, not that I'm at all trying to prolong hearing from the acoustician, because that's the best part of the day, obviously. But just in your last, is your last question just to Ms. Grinlington Hancock, the reference to those couple plans in my submissions, the rail plan and then the GPS, just noting per section 74, do acknowledge that the rail plan is not a statutory plan. We've included it in there because I think that context is important, but certainly the GPS, a statutory document under the Land Transport Management Act. So the submission there is that is relevant for your thinking under section 74. I just wanted to clarify that point, sir.
Yes, thank you very much. That's where I was heading with that question, because just need to confirm what's in and out. We've had planning evidence just recently in another topic about the city centre strategy, where the planner working for the council stridently told us that that was certainly relevant to us, even though it's come along post submissions.
Right.
So that's why I was asking a question about that as well.
Yes, sir. And also not again showing off how many cases I referred to compared to Douglas, but I will take that quick opportunity again, if he's still there. A reference, the Kiwi Property Holdings and Christchurch City Council case is that authority around how the court there certainly found those broader plans helpful where they gave context. So that's a reference to that case law there. Dr. Giles?
Yep, Dr. Giles, 10 minutes to tell us your highlights in terms of the rail noise and vibration, if you can do that for us.
I'll keep it to a couple of minutes and then I can take your questions. Very quickly to address the last question to Ms. Grinlington Hancock around the costs. The first point in terms of when everyone's interpreting the cost, so I commissioned that cost report for Acoustic Engineering Services. The outcome is 0% to 2%. And everyone keeps referring to the 2, but for an awful lot of properties, the cost is nothing. You have if you assess the site. So it's just to keep in mind, it's not a blanket 2%. In terms of is that number applicable to rail? So my advice to KiwiRail is that yes, that number is. And the reason is that well, first of all, the costs vary depending on the particular noise exposure, be it road or rail. But in terms of the reductions that you're trying to achieve through the facade, it's a similar reduction, and it's going to be a similar cost. Yes, it will be worthwhile confirming that, looking at some rail specific examples, but I'm reasonably confident in that value. So just the high level summary, the key point of difference or the key issue that's been raised by the other acousticians is around the level of rail traffic on the network in this district. I absolutely agree that if you've only got one train a day for the rest of eternity, then you wouldn't be putting these rules in here. You'd sell the line and use the real estate for something far more profitable and put all the freight on trucks, I presume. Not my speciality. When I've advised KiwiRail around the country and I've seen on various different projects, rail movements fluctuate significantly. So we've just heard about the Wairoa and the logs, and I worked with KiwiRail trying to resurrect the Wairoa yard so they could transfer logs onto the trains there. With state highways and the roads, the traffic tends to grow fairly incrementally. You'll get the odd jump here and there around the network, but generally it's incrementally. With the rail, when the rail wins a new contract for a moving milk powder or coal or whatever it is, you'll suddenly get a section of line that gets big jumps in activity. And so in setting controls, land use controls around rail, the advice that I've always given KiwiRail is around allowing for the sort of typical use of the line that could reasonably occur. And so that's the reason why the other two acousticians are saying that there's nothing there, don't worry about it. And I'm saying no, that some controls warranted. In terms of, this isn't a super precautionary approach, but you only have one crack at this when you put the new sensitive activity there. So that 0 to 2%, that's the cost if you do it when you're building the new building or you're doing the new alteration. If you come along afterwards and you're trying to work on a building retrospectively, that 2% shoots sky high, because you can incorporate those control measures in when you build it. And when you're building a house that's going to be there for decades, next to a piece of rail that's been there for decades and going to presumably be there for decades longer, that's the point at which you can do it. And while we can shore up the evidence base, and it might take us a few more years, in the interim, there's a whole lot more houses, and the issue is kind of, you know, instead of us progressively making things better, we've missed that opportunity. So that was all I really had in summary. On the rail, the vibration emissions from rail are much more significant than the road, so the noise and vibration sort of are both a very pressing issue. Shall I take questions?
Well, Kit, I've got personal experience about living on the Auckland to Tauranga line, where the agent told me in my first house that that line was just about to be closed, and the first night we stayed there, just about shook us out of our bed when the trains came through at 3 a.m. and then another one at 5
Are
a.m.
you fit to sit on this panel?
Yes. So yes, I know about the combination of the vibration and the noise in terms of personal experience.
And I've had a similar personal experience living next to a busy line in the UK, and you sort of habituate it and you don't notice. But the point I was making with the road noise before is the adverse effect is not the fact that you've kind of got used to it. It is still impacting your health. So the evidence shows that even though you're not jumping up and down with rage, living in that, it's having an adverse health effect on you over the years.
Thank you. Kat, did you have any questions?
No, I think I've got everything I wanted. Have you got Mr. Campbell's evidence there available to you, Mr. Childs? No.
No.
Steve, could you maybe share the screen, Christine? I want you can put Mr. Campbell's Appendix C and share, for example, maybe sheet. Maybe sheet 3. That one there. Share that with. Hold on, Dr. Charles, and we're going to share the screen. I just want to have a little bit of a thought experiment around the KiwiRail control. So that's where Mr. Can you see that?
Yes, yep.
That's where Mr. Campbell has overlaid the proposed 60 and 100 metre buffers from the rail corridor. And so those are the 2 shades of pink. And you see the little dashed line represents, I'm assuming, the 60, and then the full extent of the pink is the 100. So just looking at this particular part of the city, you'll see this is where the rail line goes in its traditional location right along the foreshore, and then comes through the CBD, and then obviously heads out as it heads off north. So you can see there that it's overlaid over an area that's zoned, well, it's got yellow, it's got residential zoning. So this would have an impact on, you see all of the little blocks, all of the meshes of properties there. So this control would effectively operate in the case of every one of those landowners who may wish to alter, add to, or rebuild their residential properties. So in the case of a landowner who simply wanted to, let's go through the instance of wanted to rebuild, let's say knock down and rebuild, there would be this vibration corridor that'd be wholly within it. So from the perspective of that landowner who's looking at rebuilding their house, what are they going to have to do to comply with this vibration control?
So certainly. So I think the question came up on the road before. So they'll need to measure the existing vibration levels from trains to see whether so vibration is quite localized. So on all of these residential sections we're looking at here, some of them it might be within criteria without doing anything, and then some it won't. And we can't predict across the district where those levels may fall ahead of time. So they've conduct.
So would one measurement be enough, or could they call 0800 vibration monitor and someone will come down and stick a spike in the ground and be able to tell them whether they need to do anything more or not? I mean, how sophisticated do they have to get to measure this?
So you need to measure on a that depends on what foundation system's proposed. You need to be measuring vibration on a position representative of the foundation position. Yep. For a single residential site, then usually one measurement position would be adequate. If you've got a vast development, then you'd measure a bigger geographic spread. But for a typical residential section, you'll take one measurement at the closest point of the proposed building to the rail, and that would tell you, do you need to go down the complex design, or are you okay sort of without going any further?
All right.
So what might a complex design look like? Is it similar to where you have a liquefaction issue and you have to build different foundations and concrete foundations and those sorts of things?
Unfortunately, the answer is it depends. So there's a range of solutions. So Mr. Stiles is pointing to the gold-plated, worst possible vibration solution.
The base isolation concept.
The base isolation, and then there's a range of can you address it by changing your foundation type, but using standard foundation types? Can you nudge your building slightly further away from the rail, or put your garage in the bit that's nearer to the rail and your habitable spaces so they're further away? Are there those kind of no-cost options available, or have you then got to start stepping up through sort of, okay, I do need to change the structure somehow to mitigate the vibration? And it really, because, as I say, in the airport case, you just say no, prohibit, you can't do anything here. You've got absolute certainty of outcome. You know you're controlling the vibration effects. Here, because Kiwi Rail's gone for this light touch, as Ms. Arthur Young called it, it means there is some uncertainty of what the solution will be, and that's you've got the choice to build in this land, but you've got to work through a process to determine what the appropriate design's going to be.
I mean, given that, do you think, potentially a question for Brendan Hancock, do you think there is a potential for a landowner who, because some of these sections are wholly within this area, wholly within these buffers, that the prospect of potentially having to, spend a whole lot more on a renovation or a new build may mean they'll just say, well, I'll just stick with the existing house and I'll let it fall to pieces. I mean, do you think it's a disincentive potentially? In exactly the same manner as they can choose to have drafty old uninsulated house, and as soon as they rebuild, they've got to meet today's building code, not the building code from decades ago when they built it. Yeah, no, fair call. Yeah. Yeah, we can't always live in the past. Regulation catches up, doesn't it?
Well, so we didn't have the evidence of the adverse health effects 50 years ago. So we now know that this kills people slowly and over time, but it's a significant adverse effect. We have that evidence now. We didn't have it back in the day. Now we've got the evidence, and there are practical steps, and for the most affected sites, it can be complex and costly, but there are practical steps that can control that effect. And therefore, my advice to KeyRail is always, well, technically, this is an absolute no-brainer. You've got this one opportunity when that house is being built or redeveloped, whatever it is. Technically, that's the right time to be improving that environment to make it a healthy environment for the people.
No, thank you, Dr. Charles. I didn't have anything particular more. Your evidence was very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, Stephen, your attendance today is greatly appreciated, and your evidence has been very clear. Everyone, I think we are looming up to a problem time. The reason I'm a bit anxious, I'm heading overseas and I have to get to Auckland tonight. So there's two things to complete. One is a discussion about next steps with the modelling around the road boundaries and things. And I think there is a process which we should go through. Hamish, have you turned your mind to that and give us some suggestions about what you'd like to do between now and your written reply?
So there's 2 points on that. Firstly, for the acoustic experts conference.
Yes.
And to discuss the suitability of the modelling for inclusion in the district plan.
Yes.
If that can occur by the 16th of August, for 2 weeks tomorrow.
Yes.
That's partly based on right of reply timeframe by the end of that week.
Yes.
And also Mr. Lloyd's availability is available up to 16th.
All right.
And then Waka Kotahi can provide the GIS shapefile of the model onto it as soon as possible to the council team. We can then work through just the technicalities of including in the E-plan if it was a recommendation to do that. And this goes to that issue of which I think the panel's aware of just the technicalities of including information. And just one question that we need to work through is the clipping issue. You might be aware for other overlays in the district plan within an E-plan, there's little slivers where it might just clip a very small portion of the property. Should we look to modify into it just slightly so it doesn't clip what could be hundreds of properties given the length of the state highway?
Yes. So that's a technical GIS, but that needs to be informed with some noise for us as well.
Yes. So
Okay. Are you comfortable to manage that, or can you please manage that process for us and coordinate? Don's just given us sort of wink that we can probably do up to the 16th. Stephen, is that likely to be okay for you to get together over the next couple of weeks?
Yep.
To talk with
Yes.
Nigel and John? And I think we would like a formal statement that we could rely on in terms of the opinions on its fit for purpose and that type of thing. Now, in terms of your right of reply, is in on other hearings we have rescheduled verbal right of replies. Do you think we need to do this time, or?
not from my perspective, I think
Yes.
where we're at on all the actual city and road points,
Yeah.
I think fairly clear path forward here. And the main one is just around rail noise and then vibration for both of them. Charles Evans in the last 5 minutes. It's been interesting to hear those responses to those questions. So I'm happy not to have a verbal reply. If you're happy not to have one, we'll go straight to a written one.
I think it's been an excellent hearing today all round. We've got a lot of great clarification and evidence from the experts, and the lawyers have been really great assistance to us. Just the way all of you actually talked us through just the nuances and the complexities of these and the reasons why we need to obviously got a chance to do some good planning and just everything else. So I think it's been an excellent day. So we'll just dispense with the verbal right of reply. And if you could just coordinate these next 2 steps on the road the road modelling issue. And if you're comfortable, you've heard enough from the Kiwi Rail team on their requirements, I'm certainly happy to dispense with that.
I'm happy, if it's just sort of parties to document and email to them tomorrow,
Yes,
the timeframes and process that it's intended to save yourselves.
that'd be great. Yeah. Yes, certainly, Nigel, certainly you'll be feeding into the written right reply. So you've heard all the evidence, you've got the opportunity to give us the written right reply. Is there any last comments you'd like to make before we close off?
I shouldn't start, really.
Uh,
You've given me 3 minutes.
All right, so, look, this is the process. So if you do think it's important that you do talk to us in a verbal right of reply before we see a written right of reply, we should facilitate that.
You've got time to get there.
It's over to you. How long would you need, Nigel, just to give us a verbal right of reply from your perspective?
I would say 5 minutes to start off with, but then your questions could well.
Okay, let's just
Be
give us
twice
5
that.
minutes and we'll hear that and we'll see where we get to.
Okay.
I've got a taxi waiting outside. We'll just have to hold that. Thank you.
So there's the four matters that we've been dealing with: road noise, road vibration, rail noise, and rail vibration. So as far as the road noise is concerned, the modelling, certainly interesting to talk to Dr. Charles and Mr. Stiles, and make sure that Mr. Stiles is happy with the modelling as it's taken place. If that's the case, then that will help as far as defining the affected areas near to the road. So I think we're working well on as far as the road noise is concerned, particularly for the urban areas under 70 kilometres an hour. So I think there's a way out of that issue. For the exemptions for additions and alterations, and I've provided my opinion on that for New Plymouth Airport, you might remember, and
Yes.
And I did my joint minor statement with Steve Peakle for the airport, and we were looking at 10 meters, 10 square meters, or up to 30 meters squared. But yes, I am support the exemption for additions and alterations. For road vibration, I consider that road vibration is difficult and expensive to assess and uncertain to mitigate against. And I'll think I've canvassed that in my rebuttals, so I'll leave that there. For road noise, for rail noise, sorry, I don't consider that the current rail traffic numbers and speed support the noise insulation rules, and we've heard about what could happen in the future. But there's Dr. Charles saying that there's evidence that rail noise and vibration has an impact on health. That's true, but I don't think we've got any evidence that that's happening in New Plymouth. And unless you're convinced that that future activities on this railway line are going to necessitate controls for noise insulation, then I don't think that should be put into the district plan. And certainly as far as rail vibration, it's very complicated to do. It's very uncertain as to the outcomes. And I really don't think that rail vibration should be provided for. Remembering that right through the city, there are houses there, there are dwellings there already along this route. So it's not a matter of whether houses come to the railway line and stop the railway line from operating, the reverse sensitivity issue in my mind has long since bolted. So it really comes down to the health of these people and whether noise insulating new dwellings along this line for future potential activities from the railway line. That's the decision that's got to be made. And certainly looking at the existing situation, I don't consider that it's warranted. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Nigel. Any follow-up, Kit?
Yeah, it was one thing I probably should have asked Charles and even Mr. Stiles earlier. Given we don't have a model for rail noise, is it at all possible to, I guess, theorize as to how many train movements might be required before we actually get to a point of need? I mean, is there any way of saying, well, how many at what point of congestion or traffic on that rail line would we need to be suddenly raising our hands and going, right, we've got to put some planning stuff in place for this?
Yes,
So
so
I get the clear evidence that there's not enough now. But
what's the number?
At what point does it become?
So the current control measure that was in the proposed district plan was based on a 1 hour LEQ. So basically, you just needed one train to trigger that. But really, that relies on the fact that there are more than one train. There are regular trains during the day. If there's only one train, then obviously it's not going to be enough, and that's during the day. That's not going to be enough to cause annoyance. What we could rely back on is the World Health Organization have got recommendations, and they're based on the L day, evening, night criteria, and so we could relate that back to that criteria to see if when the noise would be an issue. And obviously there would be a weighting in the evening and then a stronger weighting at night for the annoyance factors. So, but that still relies on the fact that, yeah, there would be a regular activity taking place. If it all happened during the day, then it wouldn't be too much of an issue, really.
Okay, so it's the nighttime train movements that would be the major controlling influence.
Yes, it's the same as the LDN, where the nighttime criteria is sort of a times 10. One train is as if you had 10 trains as far as the annoyance factor is concerned. And the evening is one train, is as if you had 5 trains, same as the aircraft noise.
Okay. Thanks for that, Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. That's been very helpful.
I was pleased to be able to talk.
Yes, thanks, Nigel.
Thank you very much.
With that, we'll close the hearing, and thank you everyone for your attendance.
Well, all breaks out.